Nigeria's former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, where he sat down with Arise primetime anchor Charles Anyagolu to discuss a number of topics, including Nigeria's evolution as a nation. Let's tune in.
Hello and welcome to this Arise News special interview. I'm Charles Anyagolu, and this year General Yakubu Gowon, the youngest political and military leader to rule Nigeria, turns 91. He was just 31 when that awesome responsibility fell on his shoulders, and he presided over the affairs of this country from 1966 to 1975. He came to office at a turbulent time in this country's history after two military coups in 1966. The first one that led to the killing of Nigeria's Prime Minister Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and the second, 6 months later, that saw the assassination of the head of state, General Aburi Accord. General Gowon subsequently ruled this country for 9 years before another coup removed him from office. It was during his reign that Nigeria's bloody civil war took place, lasting for 30 months. As he accepted the surrender of Biafran forces, he declared that there'd be no victor and no vanquished, a declaration that was seen around the world as a magnanimous gesture of post-war reconciliation. 55 years later, as he celebrates the milestone of exceeding the age of 90, how does he think Nigeria has evolved in all that time? And I'm delighted to say that Nigeria's former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, joins me now. General Gowon, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
It is so nice to see you. So nice to see you.
To say that we're honored is an understatement. You became head of state, as I mentioned in the intro there, at the very tender age of 31. I mean, that must have been an extraordinary challenge for you. And I'm wondering how prepared you were for what clearly must have been a very difficult role.
Yes, indeed, it was 31 going 32. And that I've had a good upbringing from home, from school, from my various military training, and of course, brought up in a very strict religious condition.
So you fell back?
So I fell back on all that. Yes, I was not prepared, simply for to rule Nigeria, but I was as a loyal soldier, to be loyal to my country, to be loyal to my head of state, and to love my country. So I had that one, that upbringing, and so I was the military training, especially at the staff college in a level, teaching you how to deal with any issue, any problem, whether you know it or not. How to appreciate, we used to call it, appreciate the situation, and then evolve into, many courses, open to you to deal with that particular problem. After which, you can then choose one of those that you think should be able to at the end result that you wanted. So that upbringing and training certainly helped me in a lot of ways. But certainly I was not trained to rule, but at least trained, given sufficient upbringing to be able to either deal with the situation the best way you can. But of course, you know that you cannot do it alone. You had other people around you. And if you can relate with them as well, so that you can all together, your parents.
So it was a collective responsibility, although you were obviously the prime lead.
Absolutely.
Right, and of course, you came to office at that young age, let's not forget that, on the heels of the January 1966 and the July 1966 coup and counter-coup. And that was a hugely destabilizing period for Nigeria. Was that what motivated you at the time to create 12 new states to replace the 4 regions?
No. Well, creation of 12 states, 4 regions. Yes, you have 4 regions, but it is the demand for the various communities that made me to think of, why don't you, in order to satisfy their wishes, why don't you, if I may, also create inner states to satisfy them? And this is from the demand of the people. That came as a result of what happened January 66.
You talked about, General Gowon, about the fact that a lot of the people who were killed, those military officers, were from the north. Did that make General Aburi Accord position from the very beginning almost on terror? As someone from this house,
I did not know what was happening in Nigeria before that, because I was right in the UK on the coast. But I think some of the stories that you hear, there was trouble, that is part of the reaction. But probably I'll come to that riot. Yes.
I mean, because the reason I asked that is that General Aburi Accord was assassinated literally 6 months after that first, and obviously there would have been brewing resentment towards him, because in a sense he personified to the people from the other side what they felt had been inflicted upon them.
Yes, I think honestly that could be the part of the reason, but the feeling I know later, because one of the feeling was that that from the other side was being was still considering finishing the unfinished symphony.
So you were not aware of the fact that there was going to be a counter coup in July 1966?
No, but not at all until that very night.
Right.
That very night, early morning, when I was woken up to say something had happened in Abeokuta, and before you know it, I think the news has spread in the whole. And I was on television trying to find out that I know that General Irasi was in Ibadan with the meeting with all the traditional rulers, and just to warn him that God is this person and he should be very careful. That of course
it was too late.
Too late. By the time I got in the government house telephone, unfortunately, already something had happened. But the instruction that I gave the senior officer in charge at that time was to make sure that if he was kept safe, taken safe somewhere until God turns him able to sort out the insurrection that had already started and what had to prepare.
Right. So he was then assassinated.
Unfortunately.
How did you
become aware that you've been chosen to become the next head of state, to replace him essentially?
Well, it is from after the effort of the chief of staff's headquarters are going to be, I think, attempt to try to to bring law and order in the battalion. And of course, unfortunately, the truth that he said, certainly decimated. And then, of course, it has to come to me. Us then, like the acting chief of the chief of staff, to go to Ikeja to try and see if I can sort out the problem. And of course, I think at that time, that is where a lot of big crisis for a number of days. There was no government, and all the civil servants, you are worried because of system dependent that was done at that time. So there was all sort of efforts, either from them, either for her to go and put things right in occasion. And of course, but one day, please, Father, they normally ask their former African general, but only at that time, I was German party chief. So that probably helped they listen to me. And if I say, we just got to make sure that things, I put right. And we did. So with civil servants, certainly came, they wanted to make contact with the most senior officer, military officer, to give them the instruction. Since the old system is still like military, that was in control. But I didn't tell you the story how I was from the contact between the civil servants, and also some of the foreign British and American ambassadors or high commission had to come and see us, to wish to find out who who is the leader of the insurrection at the time, in order to make sure that at least things is going on. And so they came, and they saw me, and of course there was discussion there from to what is happening, and the head of state. I didn't want it. I want to remain to remain either as minister or get into GOC or minister of in order to ensure that we restore the discipline and loyalty of the polity of the army, in support of 2018,
But they offered it to you.
But in the end, of course, as offered it to the junior officers, said they want to, and any of them wanted to, the gender, our leaders was to look after the population, to restore loyalty, discipline and loyalty for the act. But however, in the end, in fact, the most of the younger officers, they're saying that I'm the only one that they would accept. That is irrespective from any from any of the group in the army. So, although I was not in the most senior, there were senior people now, or DDP, the children, and others, but unfortunately, they said they did not want anybody but for me, the people to give them the leadership, and so that was how he got the leadership. He came to it.
And of course, subsequent to that January 66 coup, the July 66 coup, and you subsequently becoming head of state, there were attacks on people from the southeast in the northern region, and even in parts of the western region as well. The people in the southeast call it a pauldron. What was your assessment of what happened, and what did you try to do to stop those killings of people from the southeast?
My goodness, it was something that we did not expect. That was more of reaction of what either happened in the area. Now, if you remember before Iran's did you remember something that the regions are going to be disbanded and all going to be provincial when you became the minister, that is going to become provinces. And of course there was a lot of reaction, fear and reaction from all the regions, but of course except these Midwest probably touch on you because it is already quite normal that they have their own vision, but there was reaction in the top in the north and the west against that unitary system of government, which it is very people I think because they were afraid of being overwhelmed by the people from the east. There was that fear because that was why the leadership in the northern Palestine leadership, the wiped out, and the military leadership also were wiped out at the same time. And the action, really, that is, really created, some of the thing that happened. It is not the military that that did it. The military one that Trump did was the revenge, where all the officers that took part in the coup were, of course, taken in, and because I do not know what they did to them, but at least those of them that were able to be taken from the various prisons in the country. Yes, I think they were unfortunately penalty. But some of them that lived, for example, Exile, later on tried to fight, and unfortunately he was killed in operation towards the Indian Banjo, was taken, I think, somewhere in this and in others. So really, a lot of ways thing that happened, it was more or less the reaction of what happened in January, and some of the
and you couldn't stop.
No, of course, I had to stop it, my goodness. I remember during that time, during that crisis, yes, what one has to do in whatever way one could to get the leadership authorities in those areas to stop Trump got boss nonsense. And I spoke to some of the chiefs, some of the political leaders that were there, people that at least people that can do something like to douse the situation. And Bauchi from, and I remember certainly remember that the Emir of Bauchi that I had to speak, he always speak to, has my name. So he was my namesake. His name was Yakubu certain Bauchi. Less of it, I spoke to them, and to do whatever we can, and also the soldiers, to make sure that the people were protected. And it is not from the act of the military, but the reaction of the population, because of what's happened to their leadership. When you come to think of it.
But then, of course, the people in the southeast felt that that was the clearest indication to them that they were no longer wanted in the union that was Nigeria. They then broke away, and of course after that came the horror of the civil war, because you went out to bring them back, to forcibly bring them back. That civil war happened under your watch. As you look back at that period with the benefit of hindsight, could that conflict that claimed millions of lives have been prevented?
Yes, I think I have said that if the East does not break up from Nigeria, yes, and that was what I kept on saying. Why people say that you want to say no, I have a responsibility, to keep Nigeria, Nigeria, and as far as I'm concerned, that is my duty, and I won't. But if the situation gets to this stage, when I had to choose between allowing the breakup, or having to stop it physically. I know where my responsibility is because of my loyalty, love and loyalty to the country.
Indeed, and many, but there were attempts.
Sorry, go ahead.
So let me just say,
Sure.
and the question of the millions of people that we say between, right from the beginning, if I made sure that it is not a war either against the Igbos as such, but it is in order to stop the breaking up of Nigeria. Right? Yes, and so what I did, I get a code of conduct. How the operations was to go, etc. And we are not fighting the people. Make sure that we protect them, all people protect the women, and children, and you will only take up arms against those who take up arms against you. And honestly, and with the instruction that anything that was done against the population that is not correct would be dealt with, and it is that was done, and it is not millions of people. Now, we tried to send leaflets people to be sure that honestly it is not fight against them, but we had to stop the government leading the union, what we have. And even they should not for me to talk, but of course when the names that I was called at that time, also before the Vandal, the whatever it is, there was no name that I was.
It was called propaganda of war.
Okay, accepted. We used to say, please don't move, don't run away. But of course, they used to tell their people they should run away from those vendors, from those horrible leadership that is going to treat them. And that is how a lot of people lost their lives. And then when we try to say the question of feeding, feeding the people, for example, we used to allow aid to come, but we said let it come to Nigeria and let it be inspected by international people, so that there is no question of weapon the Christ might do. And but the other side refuses. So what can you do? We also arrange for the food to be able to be taken in by road and etc. Of course, the other side will say no, because of other work, Nigeria is going to poison the food. Whether we are afraid of weapons being in there, but of Nigeria will be poisoning the food, and so they will say no to the and in the end, really a lot of people, it is not from killed by gunshots, right? But all the palm trees that I saw when I went to that part of the country, and I saw all those black spots on trees, palm trees, etc. And I was wondering what sort of disease is this on those trees? And someone said, no, those are bullet marks. So most of the bullets were more on the on those trees,
not on people.
Not on people.
But I mean, that was obviously when the war had started and advanced. Prior to the start of the war, many analysts have suggested that if the Aburi Accord had been implemented, the tragedy of the Civil War might have been averted, and they blame you for reneging on that Aburi Accord. Is that how you see it? Did your government renege on the Aburi Accord?
Well, I think that is the interpretation, that we not know whether that accord was the actual final result written from it was not to be done until after we got home.
But you agreed to the accord when you were in Gulf.
No, this is the accord. It is not a question of agreement in accord. This, it is when we come back home, and I made it. I made a statement. When you come back home, and I make a statement that you about Aburi.
Right. Because that's why it was called an accord. An accord means that you had agreed.
No, what accord? But then it has to be done in Nigeria before Friday.
So you needed to come home and discuss it.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, people doesn't want to believe it. I was having a serious attack of either fever or whatever it is, and I could not make any decision.
At Aburi.
No, at home.
Right.
When we arrived in the home, and Tojuku was one who then, when he came, he went and made made the statement. He made the statement about the Aburi Accord, and the governor of the Midwest, Duke AJ, then rang me at that very early hours of the day. To tell me, he said, "Have you heard?" So I said, "Heard not." And you know what the Oji God said? So I said, "No." I haven't heard anything that that happened. But that is the reason why I could not make this statement, which would have then clearly say exactly what the Accord, what we agree with the and he told me like, oh, you said you are going to move a cart, that the military is going to be etc. going to be controlling now from each from each opposition, for example. And he was what I said today that is that actually honestly is that what we agreed to? But he said yo. So I said, well, honestly I do not know what that is. So that was the time, and later on had to ask the other governors what they think, and they were able to say, well, that is not what it is. So we had to organize a meeting of all the governors, and he was invited to attend so that we can deal with the Aburi Accord. And we met at NIFO in Benin, and he did not turn up. And of course, all the secretaries to the government, all the were there, all the governors were there. He was invited, but of course he said because of security reason he cannot come, so he didn't come or send anybody. And we discussed that Aburi discussion, and for example, the permanent, the secretary to the government, the West, did ask, came and appealed to me, as a Christian, please. If we can make sure that that accord, what we agreed is in the true spirit of Aburi, and I told him, as a Christian, I can assure you that that is the way. It is going to be, and we had that meeting. In the end, we invited him to come. He did not come. So, and when we ended the meeting, of course, the spirit of Aburi was totally, as if it was sort of, I do not know what accord he was reading, because he came to the meeting with, prepared papers, of things that he wanted. And of course, we discussed them one by one, agree on some, disagree on some. Like, for example, to give you one of the major issue, although we say that the military would be zoned, but the control, and then he wanted, those zones to be commanded by the governor. Say you have a military zone in the north, will be commanded by the governor of the ministry. In the east, will be commanded by by him, and military in the west, by this thing. And of course, we did not agree with that one. And certainly it was not one of those agreed. But none of us went there, with any senior official, secretary to the government, or senior, etc. We did not. We just went there, as far as we are concerned, to be able to meet as officers now and then, to agree to be able to get back home and resolve our problem at home. That was, my understanding, but that is not his understanding. And so when we went to NIFO and discussed this, the spirit of Aburi was certainly included. The only thing that I added was that no region, will can secede,
right?
Can from the
so that there was
country.
there was a clear from your point of view,
Absolutely.
misunderstanding.
Absolutely.
The war, of course, ended in 1970, and you came up with that no victor, no vanquished declaration, which was seen by many people, both at home and abroad, as a extraordinary, magnanimous gesture of post-war reconciliation, unprecedented in many ways. Would you say that 55 years later, Nigeria has healed from the wounds inflicted by that terrible war, and that no victor, no vanquished declaration of yours was fully adopted in this country?
Well, at least we've survived how many years now? We survived how many years?
It'll be 65 this year.
Well, we've survived 65 years. Since the war, let us say.
Yes, 55 years since the war.
Since the war. At least, if there is anything, my whole idea is that when all this thing is done, at least we can be able to come back, and rebuild the country and make the great efforts that have been done. Yes, we've gone through, through dangerous time whereby as though we're going to break up, etc. But we've now come back, and we are now improving at every stage.
But you do know that survival is not the same as thriving.
Oh, thriving! Isn't Nigeria thriving today? Come along. Let us have it. Have we not gone beyond? What we were 55 years ago, and we still trying to get the perfection. Certainly, I did not mean that things will be absolutely perfect the way they want, or anybody wants. But at least we will survive as a country, improving at every stage,
right?
To where we are. And if we look at things the way things are going today, most of the people that were affected by the war today, and great progress and happening in the East. In all the states in the East, I certainly did not try to stop development and improving the situation as the time goes along.
After the Nigerian Civil War, your administration enjoyed enormous financial liquidity because of the oil boom of that period. Nigerians believed that money was not necessarily properly utilized for the development of this country. I wonder what your response is to that. Could you perhaps have applied those resources better?
Well, first of all, we've got to make sure that we protect, that sources of that wealth, and to make sure that it is not destroyed. So we really remove the attack from the other side, who are doing a lot of the destruction, whether it is nature bridge or whatever, or various areas, so that the federal side did not get to them. We made sure that those were protected, because I know that we are going to need those resources for the reconstruction and redevelopment, and the development of the country. And that is what we did. We thank God that soon after that we were able to have sufficient resources to carry on the 3 or the 4 R's. We say the 3 R's in the country, and making sure that
that's reconstruction, rehabilitation,
and reintegration.
Right.
Reintegration.
Yeah.
So there were 4, but we just use the 3. and in fact we were able to achieve, that to restore the damaged school, hospitals, etc., in the affected areas. That is the whole of the east, and the other areas like in the Midwest that were a lot of destruction, and also part of the north that we had a few bomb attacks, from the other side. So really, yes, in fact, that resources was used, for the development of the country.
Right. I think a lot of people would probably agree with you that there was considerable development, certainly in the Southeast after the Civil War, and other places across the country. But there are those who say that oil boom which Nigeria enjoyed not only propelled a measure of economic development, but it also fueled a huge amount of corruption, which has continued to deepen since that time. They accuse you of failing to tackle the scourge of corruption and suggest that if you had, perhaps the problem of officially sanctioned theft wouldn't be as bad as it is today. What's your response to that?
Well, I just want people to tell me those areas of corruption that was not dealt with during our time, or, well, at least let them start with me to say that corruption, it was me.
Well, let me mention two things, and not aimed at you directly, but aimed at the government generally. There was that cement armada in 1975, a result of signing contracts with international suppliers, delivery of millions of tons of cement in 1 year, and it had the capacity to take, Lagos Port just had the capacity to take just 1 million. And then there was the other one, the indigenization decree of 1972, which allowed Nigerians to take over or share in the ownership of the big international companies in this country. People criticized that, saying that it provided a windfall, that indigenization decree, for just a few highly connected Nigerians. So those are two examples there.
Now, let me say this: the cement armada that you talked about, that was came in just before, actually before my overthrow. Now, at the end of the war, part of our effort in order to reconstruction, of the country, was to make sure that we were able to, do this, throughout, the country. So if you have the civil servants, wanting cement, you want them, for the military, etc. And of course, well, various groups say they wanted that one, and we wanted to get those cement, but we went to America, we went to Britain, and we could not get anything. We went to Europe, to Turkey, to Bulgaria, etc., to try and get some of this thing. And honestly, we did not get any. There was, shortage, of this supply. At that time, Gaddafi had already bought all the cement that he wanted for the development of his own country. And honestly, we did not. But there was a glut of shipping at that time in the world. Now, go and find that out. There was a glut of shipping. And of course, we could not get the amount of cement even the million that people say only that the port can take. None of
so that was a false allegation.
No, it was absolutely false.
Right.
But there was certainly a glut of shipping, and of course there were people that said they will get cement for you, etc. And with the with the shipping glut that we have, yes, they cannot. We could not get it. But they would say that they have bought those cement, to the country, and if they brought that amount of cement, and they dump it, by our port, how many ships would be able to?
Well, let me move on from that.
So let me just say that. So there was certainly collusion between some of these shipping people. Some might be some officials.
Right.
And
what about the indigenization decree? I don't mean to interrupt you.
I only during my time only dealt with most of the commercial areas, etc. The Lebanese shops, etc. That was what I did. We were very careful, dealing with the oil companies or the big companies, because I wanted to make sure that at least all parts of the country are able to benefit from it. One of those things was done by the government that succeeded me. Obasanjo's government,
right.
not me.
Right. Okay. That is a fair assessment, because we know that a lot of the implementation of the indigenization decree happened subsequent to your government.
Yes.
You had promised Nigerians that there would be a return to civil rule in 1975, and then you postponed that date indefinitely. Why did you do that?
No, the main reason I can tell you is that when we gave the promise that this is going to happen, when some of my all the commissioners left, they started this infighting, political infighting, among themselves, and it was honestly reminiscent to the January the 15th.
Right. So it wasn't just you trying to hold on to power.
No. That is not. Because I promised that this is. I was going to restore power by 76, but because of this attitude, honestly, I was genuinely, afraid that it is going to get us back to, the period that brought,
So you thought the best
situation.
way to deal with it would be to postpone
it, and then we had a very big economic development plan, and even before then. When they said there was nothing happening in Nigeria, was it not the time that we were having the roads, and we started building economic roads from Sokoto, Ilela to Badagry, from Maiduguri to Calabar, and to all the major ports in Nigeria? Is it not the time that in fact we have Volkswagen, Peugeot, Steyr, Leyland, and Mercedes were ready to come to Nigeria to invest in Nigeria? Was it not the time that we had investment that was coming to Nigeria after the Civil War, when they saw the way we were going, and things were going well? We are choosing the investors that could invest. And not only to invest their money, but the know-how, the technology, etc., so that Nigeria can move beyond what it is. Or you can, all right, let's just say, what if they are trying to do today in Nigeria.
Nevertheless,
so,
General Gowon, the decision to postpone that return to civil rule led to your overthrow. Some would make that argument. And a date that you probably won't forget, which is the 29th of July, 1975, you were overthrown in a coup whilst you were attending an OAU summit in Kampala in Uganda. How do you recall what happened and how did you react to it?
No, I can assure you, the interesting thing was that the reason why they said I was overthrown was that the government, that I went to Kampala to try and do exactly what the government was said. Nigeria has come of age and it can. No country can tell them what to do, etc. Now, I went to Kampala. I encouraged the conference in Kampala after being chairman of the OAU in 73, so that we can decide on trying to help all the African countries that are still under colonial rule to become independent. And of course, the government that saw me off, this is what they were claiming they want to do. And they sort of condemn all those countries. And even, for example, refusing Kissinger to come to Nigeria, which I have organized so that he can meet me in August, about middle of August, to discuss American attitude towards the African countries as a whole. So I think that one that I was overthrown because of that. Honestly, it did not worry me the least. This is what they had wanted to do. I knew about the plan. I was told that this is going to happen. Is going to happen by a special group that they say belong to me. And I didn't bother to find out, who they were.
Right.
I was only told two names who are very close to me and from my own particular.
And was Muritala Mohammed one of them?
No. Muritala Mohammed, I can assure you, if you want me to tell you my story, me and Muritala Mohammed, since school. I was a senior person in Barewa when he joined the school.
But he led your overthrow.
He could lead my overthrow, but I was told it is our boys.
Right.
Our boys. And honestly, it didn't bother me. I did not know who they were, fully who they were, until Bangida's book. That really showed who they were.
Right.
And,
but there was a report after that coup that implicated you in the coup that overthrew and killed Muritala Mohammed. You were declared wanted, you were stripped of your rank, your pension was stopped, and the allegation was that you met Lieutenant Colonel Dimka, who was the mastermind of that coup in London. Was that allegation true?
Well, he came with other people, other people. He came with them.
So he met you in London?
Well, he met us. Me, my family, and these people that wanted to come and see me I did not know that he was even in the UK until when he came to see me.
So what did he say to you when he came to see you?
Well,
did he
I
say,
told
I'm
him,
planning to have a coup?
Do you think that such a thing could be discussed with me, or would you believe that such a thing could be discussed with me? Well, if anything was said, I said a moment ago, I told you that what took me to Kampala is what the government was trying to do, to say that they've come of age, and they've come of age, and nobody can tell them what to do, and they even jettison, or refuse, what's his name, to come to to visit.
You mean Henry
Nigeria.
Kissinger?
Pardon?
No, you were saying, what's his name? I'm wondering, were you talking about Henry Kissinger?
Kissinger,
Right,
yeah,
who was the
Kissinger.
Secretary of State
He
of
was
the
Secretary
United
of State,
States
and
at
if you
the
remember,
time.
and he's also head of the security.
Yeah.
And my goodness me, if you do that before, you can be in trouble.
Right.
But however, let us say this: yes, he came along with these people that who are one, of them was from close to me. He's like a brother. He came along with them. In fact, he asked them if they could take him back to his hotel or whatever it is, and but they said no, they've got to come and see me. And so they cannot, they cannot take him, but he can come along with him.
So he sort of tagged along.
So along with them,
right.
And we saw, and he did mention that that government is going communist, and so I said, but that government is doing exactly the sort of thing. I went to Uganda, Kampala, to do. So, but he was complaining about, the government being.
So he was complaining generally, but he wasn't very specific about what he was going to do about his complaints.
Not what I'm going to do. I had nothing to discuss. I was warning him, the way he was saying it, talking about communism, etc., etc.
Right.
I was worried. I said, but that the sort of thing that you are complaining about, senior officers doing things without consulting them. I said, is that not the sort of thing that all of you were doing to me before? So I said, no, I want him. I said, talking about communism, what do you know? Senior officers have to take decisions that and it is for you people, for you younger ones, to listen to them, because they are doing it on your behalf and on behalf of the whole country. I was myself worried about that statement, and I was wondering who authorized him to leave the country to a foreign country and to UK. And the way he was speaking, honestly, I suspected that he has some contact with some some intelligence officers,
right,
who are fanning this question of
a coup. In any case,
not of a coup,
right,
of communism,
right,
and or some people that are trying to make sure that because of our old relationship with the.
Right. Well, as I'm sure you know, he subsequently returned to Nigeria and carried out a coup.
Yes.
Against Murtala Mohammed, in which Murtala Mohammed was assassinated, and he himself, Dimka, was subsequently caught and executed.
Yes.
you at the time, as I mentioned, they had mentioned your name along with that, but in the end, you were pardoned by President Shagari and your military rank.
I was not pardoned by Shagari.
Right.
Okay. Yes, when Shagari wanted to, was involved in government, I think, etc. They wanted Ojuku's in a case to be done. So they wanted to pardon Ojuku,
right.
And of course, they said they wanted to pardon me, and I sort of say, pardon who? Me? My goodness gracious me!
Yeah.
To me to be pardoned, I will not accept pardon, because I know I have got nothing to do with that coup, but also even trying to stop it. And for that reason, I said, I'm not going to accept pardon. But if you want to pardon Ojuku, yes, it will be the continuation of the reconciliation that
right.
We had.
Nevertheless,
let me finish this one.
Please.
It is important.
Go ahead.
And I sort of said, no, I'm not going to. If anybody is to ask for forgiveness, it is they are the one to ask me for that, and so I'm not going to accept pardon. And in the end, President Shagari had to accept that. And of course, well, he was my Minister of Finance, and for that reason, at least he knows, what am I, and he knows,
and he respected you.
Yeah, so they had to find a word. So I said, no, pardon, I will not accept, because in Nigeria, and if you say pardon, whatever it is, even Queen's pardon will not be.
Nevertheless,
he in the end accepted this thing. But to say that if these officers, that it is me who either promoted them, etc., did that, yes, it is their time. They acted the way they want to feel. They are strong, they're powerful. That is not the way I use my power.
Right.
That is not the way I use my power.
Well, your military, I wonder if, given all that, I mean, you came back to Nigeria, you're a very well-respected elder statesman in this country. I wonder if you've had any desire since you left office to rule or govern Nigeria again, as we've seen the likes of Olusegun Obasanjo, Muhammadu Buhari, who were former military heads of states, do in this country. Did you ever have that desire?
I never had, except I was almost forced into it by Babangida's the A4 system. When
the option A4.
Yes, option A4. And when they selected Abiola for SDP, and I was selected for
the NRC.
NRC. Now, and there was pressure from me, from or from whichever source, and generally from the north, etc., that I should be the candidate. And honestly, I reluctantly, my wife, of course, didn't want it at all, didn't want to hear about it at all. I reluctantly went along. But by the only stage that I reached was the first level, the ward level.
Right.
The ward level. It didn't go even to the local government, and before you go to the regional. And, yes, but honestly, no. That is not. I was only interested in making sure that whatever contribution I can make in advising from various leadership, and to make sure that we continue to make Nigeria a reality.
And a big part of that contribution that you made was, I think, epitomized in the slogan that was used during the war, which is "to keep Nigeria one is a task that must be done." That kind of sums up what you were trying to do. Is Nigeria one today?
Well, is it? Are we still not Nigeria?
I mean, in the real sense of a united country, united in a vision.
Tell me which country is that absolutely united? Tell me, what it is that you do not have different, viewpoints, etc.
Yeah, but what would you advise? I mean, let's assume that what you're saying is correct. What would you advise is the best way to deepen Nigerian unity going forward?
Well, it is up to the people. As far as I'm concerned, whoever you are a Nigerian. I love you. I trust you until you prove to me, otherwise. So it is up to the Nigerians, to either accept the way I accept Nigeria, whichever way it is today. If it is one or if it is not one, but we are still Nigerians. To me, it is Nigeria that I hope I will be until I die. If after I've died and other people said that is not they don't want Nigeria at all, then of course it is up to up to them.
But it is important for the different parts to feel a sense of inclusion, because one of the things you tried to do in 1966 and 67 was to bring back everybody, and at the end of the war, you said there was no victor, no vanquished. In other words, that everybody had an equal stake in this country. So that sense of inclusion informed the way that you tried to run this country. And I wonder whether you think that that is an essential part, that inclusion, sense of inclusion is an essential part of trying to make people feel that they are part of a united Nigeria.
Well, that is why, honestly, my belief, belief and trust in democracy is sincere, and that is what I have been trying to do. Well, as I've said, when I grew up, and when I came and Nigerian in a crisis came in, I said, I want to return. I hope the few loyal ones of us can return the government to the status quo. That is not to the military, but to back to democracy. And when the July thing happened, yes, terrible thing happened. I certainly do not accord that. But one try to see if one can save the situation. And of course, when the bad thing really happened, all that now remains is whatever it is that when we'll try to continue and then try to put it right. And that is what one tried to do. And this is the reason why all the government that come, I do not involve myself in governance, but I at least advise people, views express left, right, and center. We try to go almost to the precipice, but somehow the goodness of Nigerians, they will come back and continue to try to find the best way of living.
Right.
And so this is the way I hope one day we'll be able to have the perfect system that satisfies everyone.
And General, we're almost at the end of this very interesting conversation. you've spoken about a lot of things, but let's speak finally about yourself. How would you like to be remembered?
Well, I want to be remembered as someone who loved his country, Nigeria, who loved Nigerians, and who pray that if I cannot fight it, at least pray for Nigeria to continue to be a country that all of us would love. I know it is impossible for every country to be absolutely perfect. Today I heard that from Nigeria's Trump says that Nigeria might be one of those countries that they are going to deny visa. So it meant I cannot go to America anymore. Well, it meant that I should try to make my country better than America so that I can stay in Nigeria.
On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. General Yakubu Gowon, former head of state, thank you ever so much. And to you, our audience, I've been speaking to the former Nigerian head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, who led this country during its most turbulent and arguably its most prosperous time. I'm Charles Anyegolu in Abuja. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
What a fantastic, insightful, deep interview, thought-provoking as well, conducted by Charles Anyegolu, who is now joining us live from our studio in Abuja. Charles, congratulations on that fantastic interview. It gave us a lot to ponder about, and I know we all have a few questions. I'll just kick it off and say, the Aburi Accord, I know a lot of people were waiting to hear his thoughts on that. Were you satisfied with how he responded to that question?
Well, good to see you, Vimbai, and thanks very much indeed for having me on your program. I mean, all of you. But yes, it was, that was a really very, brilliant interview, I thought, not from my point of view of asking him the questions, but the fact that he was very forthcoming. I mean, he wasn't actually scheduled to do the interview on that day, but we kind of doorstepped him, and he then very kindly agreed to sit down with us, and we're very grateful for that. But yes, you brought up the issue of Aburi. That's a very controversial topic, and I think the jury will probably be out until somebody writes a seminal book that really assesses what both sides did, and if there's any documentation and so on, brings that to the fore. But as far as he was concerned, his understanding of what happened is completely different from what people in the southeast, and certainly the people who worked with Ojukwu, the way they, the former Biafran leader, the way they saw it, are completely different. So yes, I think the jury will still be out on that nettlesome question of Aburi.
Well, that was a fantastic interview, Charles. It was really fantastic to be able to see you in your element outside of the studio, but still being able to hold down such an insightful interview. First and foremost, I couldn't believe we were looking at a man who was 90 years old. I have to say he looks fantastic for his age. And then just to ask you personally, was there a point in the interview that you were completely taken aback by any of his responses? Was there something that perhaps you had your own preconceived notions about, but then sitting in his presence, you left the conversation feeling completely different? What was a standout moment for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and good to see you, Femi. I think that there was a point where the bit where he talked about the coup and what happened in, I think 2 points actually, two sort of segments of the chat. When he talked about what happened in 1966, and then when he talked about the coup that removed him from office in 1975. I think he was very sort of defensive at some points, and he made very sort of strenuous efforts to exonerate himself from liability in many ways, and it is to some extent a natural response. But those were the things that actually stood out for me. He talked about the coup in 1966, both coups, and he wasn't in any way directly involved, which is contrary to what sort of public opinion appeared to be. And the fact that all the sort of junior officers rallied around him and decided that he was going to be the head of state. And the stories differ, of course, as to how he came to be the head of state. But also the other very sort of interesting moment was when he was pushed out of office, and how he kind of came to learn about it at the OAU summit in Uganda. You hear about these things and you read about these things, but it's actually really quite, amazing when you sit down with the man who was at the center of those developments and actually hear him put it across. So it was very interesting. Those were the moments that I think stood out for me. And by the way, I've got Mr. Rufai sitting next.
Good to see you.
My old friend Rufai.
Good to see you.
And he came into Abuja and he didn't tell me he was coming in.
I'm sorry, I always sneak into Abuja every now and then. But I must say, it is indeed a very fantastic interview. Brilliant, I must say, with the questions you did ask, and brilliance with the way you pushed back and put the facts in. It's a class work you have done. Stuff for journalism schools, should be able to, watch and just learn at your feet or your format. But a couple of things. Number one will be the issue of the Cementa Matter that you brought forward. A lot of people said the Cementa Matter, no, not a lot of people. What we know from history was a beehive of bureaucratic incompetence, and he was in the arms of affairs. And it was under him it happened. That case was so bad that there were many case laws that came out as a result of the Cementa Matter. We had court cases up till the 80s when that happened. But he tried as much as possible to remove himself out of it. And if he keeps insisting that there was no corruption under him, how about the 1974 census? That a lot of people made jokes about because of the lack of integrity of that census and how skewed that census was. He also tried to exonerate himself from the indigenization decree, which a lot of people say, no, hang on a minute, there is something in there. And the last part of it was even the emergence, how he became leader. The story he told there are many accounts. If you read the likes of Max Solion, if you read the likes of John Centaure's account, one of the most vivid and balanced accounts of the 60s, it's not the account he told there. That's why a lot of people are taken aback. In fact, while the interview was going on, somebody rang me up and did say they have a contrary account that they're going to release, even contrary recordings that they have. What would you say about, those times where he just tried to meander out of it? You asked a very critical question. You asked him, do you think we're healing now? But he just meandered through that question.
Well, don't forget that, although to be honest, I found him to be an extraordinarily lucid man at the age of, he's just about to turn 91 in a few months in October. He was incredibly lucid for somebody that old. But you've also got to remember that he is somebody who's that old. He's heading on to being 91 years old. And that means that not only does he have foggy moments, possibly in his memory, although there was no evidence of that, but there can also be, a measure of sort of selective synchronization, let me put it that way. You see what I mean? Where people pick things that, they think leave them in a much better light. He's also a human being. We tend to see things from a subjective perspective. And even though he was head of state, his argument before we started the interview is that he still has a limited sense of what is actually going on. He gets information, he acts on it, he gives instructions, it is carried out, it comes back to him. Some people say it was carried out, others say it wasn't carried out. So, I'm not putting up a defense for him, but in many ways I can see why his version of events might differ from those of other people.
All All right, Charles Anyagolu, again, thank you so much for that interview. I'm sure it will be broadcast again throughout the day on the same platform. You can also catch it on YouTube. Insightful and one that people definitely do need to tune into. Thank you again. It's now time for a short break. When we return, Ojokwe will be here with details on what's trending. Do stay with us.
Guy, with the rising cost of things, we need to plan our next move.
Guy, I agree with you. I mean, with the money we make, we should not be struggling with our finances now.
Maybe you both need better banking options.
What do you know about better banking options?
I recently moved my salary account to Polaris Bank, and since then, it's been a smooth ride for me. They bought over my existing loan and gave me better interest rates and repayment terms.
Are you serious?
Yes, as a Polaris salary account holder, I can get personal term loan, auto loan, mortgage, 50% salary advance, credit card, and more without going to